Hi, this is Truth Seeker Atheist here, and as you can see, this is a strange early spring snow that we have. We probably got 6 or 7 inches of snow on the ground, and they're forecasting several more, so we could have up to 10 inches of snow on the ground, which is very strange for April indeed. I don't want to harp on the memorial that much. I've already made 2 videos regarding the memorial. One was sort of a silly video, and but it made a point that there's a number of things about celebrating the memorial that just doesn't make sense. Regarding leaven and regarding yeast, and the fact that in the wine there's yeast. You use yeast to make the alcohol in the wine, and ferments the sugars in the grapes, and it ferments to the point where it no longer ferments, and yet they don't do anything about killing the yeast in the wine. Yet in unleavened bread, it's important that you add no yeast, even though in leavened bread you kill the yeast by by cooking it and baking it in the oven. But well, anyway, that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is I came across a video that disturbed me a little bit, and I think it comes down to a form of activism. There are individuals who believe that by going into kingdom halls, into crashing memorials and such, is a good idea. I object to that form of what you might call activism. I don't call it activism. I think these individuals are trying to take back the power they felt that was taken from them when they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I can understand the feeling, but by crashing Jehovah's Witness meetings and memorials, actually works against the entire objective. Watchtower is a big organization with an organized legal department, and they have a long history of defending their First Amendment rights, and this Kingdom Hall crashing may have short-term gratification. You feel empowered. You get up and you stand in front and speak in front of a crowd and tell you're about a 2-second spiel before they escort you out. And then they close the doors on you, and you're not in there anymore. And I've seen this time and time again. And the problem is that the First Amendment of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, guarantees any religion the right to worship in peace, to form congregations, and to have undisrupted religious services. Any congregation even when the Catholic Church was at its peak in child abuse scandal, people were not disrupting church meetings. It wasn't something that you heard of. The activism came through exposure through the media and working through legal means. Disrupting a person's right to a religious meeting, a religious worship, is violating their First Amendment rights. And I think possibly where this stems from is that many, there are tens of thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses who are becoming awake, and they're waking up to the fact that they've been duped, that they've been lied to. And of course, the first reaction to anything like that when you become awake is anger. I felt angry. I understand the anger. I felt angry when I realized that all those years of my life were wasted in believing a fairy tale. But again, disrupting a meeting is not going to change things. It's not going to put a stop to their worship. They're not going to listen to you. And those that are interested in possibly listening, they're going to be afraid to check out things online because they're going to feel like they're being watched more closely by their leadership. And so I think it does work against the activists in that sense. There's another element to this that I noticed, and when a person who you don't know, from the man on the moon, walks into an assembly and stands up and disrupts the meeting, that they don't know what his intent is. They don't know if he's got a gun in his pocket. They don't know if he's going to do something. This country has had too many of these incidents where an individual will come into a crowded situation and a deranged individual and kill and hurt many people with guns. It's happened time and time and time again, and you can't deny that that's a factor in this whole crashing matter. So it's engendering fear. And I in this one clip, there was a reaction of a young mother that just said it all to me. And this is the clip. I'll show it to you in just 1 second. You watch this individual. I only downloaded that one portion of the clip. I didn't want to put the individual's entire dialogue on this video. I just wanted to get this one clip in just to show the point that I'm getting at. And here it is.
Okay, I just finished crashing the memorial at Forest.
Now, obviously, that young mother was terrified. She was absolutely terrified. She hovered over that little child as any mother would under those circumstances. And there's no question that when fear is involved, that's really wrong. That's not the way to get things done. That's using Watchtower's tactics. Watchtower uses fear. They use fear of Armageddon. They use the fear of estrangement from Jehovah to dominate people's lives, and to use the same tactics back. Especially if you think, that you're a Christian. Jesus didn't advocate retaliation. Jesus was the first pacifist. He allowed himself to be crucified as opposed to taking physical action. And there are others that were successful, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and they got their ideas from Henry David Thoreau, who had written papers and was arrested for not participating in the War of 1845, which he felt was an unjust war against Mexico. And he didn't use terror and he didn't use fear. He wrote his famous papers that have influenced peaceful demonstrations from that point in history on. And there's nothing wrong with peaceful demonstration. It's a perfect right of Americans to use demonstration. But at the same time, the First Amendment guarantees the right of free speech and freedom of religion, and the freedom to worship in peace, without disruption. If you start tampering with the First Amendment, then Jehovah's Witnesses have not hesitated in the past to use the U.S. justice system to protect their rights. And these are just scattered activists that they're not coalesced. Many of them are angry, and they don't have the legal means to fight against an organization with the money that Watchtower has. And Watchtower is a legal department with a very, very strong Supreme Court history. And so, I think this is something that needs to be considered. It's you don't want to provoke a giant, because when you stir that giant, you're going to make it more difficult all around, because then other forms of activism, legitimate forms of activism, may be considered, may be rolled into any action that Watchtower says or considers being persecuted. And so it could have an all-around deleterious effect on activism altogether. And the other thing about this is I think that many, like I said, there are tens of thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses leaving the Watchtower every year. Paul Grundy, he's crunched the numbers. I've crunched the numbers. I know that there are tens of thousands that are leaving, if not more. And I know for a fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are kept separate from the world all of their lives. And that this is true for those that have come awake. And they have no real concept of how society works in a secular way, because they've been kept separate. And suddenly they're in this secular world and secular government, and without a real proper and formal education in how our government works. The way school is treated by Jehovah's Witnesses is that children believe or are taught that school is their personal territory that for witnessing, and they're to witness to their teachers and to witness to the primary objective of school is to witness to schoolmates and to witness to teachers, and not necessarily listen. They certainly want you to get by, but they don't want you necessarily to make school a priority. The amount of time it takes to devote to getting A's, their focus is not this world, but a future world. And so children in school are not, Jehovah's Witness children in school are not taught to listen to what's being taught. So they don't have an appreciation of what is being taught in history, in civics, in terms of our government. Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't have a college education where you can take courses like government, how our government works. I took a course in American government in college when I went to college, and I'm glad I did, because I got to understand how our government works, the body, the principles that form the basis, the foundation of our government, and the rights that we are entitled to as American citizens. And I don't think that those individuals who have come out of the Watchtower as adults and really don't have the opportunity to let's say, go to college, necessarily really appreciate the rights of the American government and the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, guaranteed to American citizens, including religions. In fact, one of the reasons why this country was even founded was for freedom of religion. I mean, the early New England colonies were persecuted religious groups, and so freedom of religion was a fundamental part of the colonization of the United States, and became a key part of our basis of government, which is the Constitution. And there's simple words, and they're words that people should be able to understand. But if you don't have the consequences of violating the trust and the rights of the Constitution, then it could really boomerang back and work against us. Over the years, violations of the Constitution have ended up eroding the rights of American citizens as opposed to guaranteeing the rights of American citizens. Because the government then is forced to protect citizens, and often protecting citizens means taking away our rights. And so I think people ought to give that a bit of a thought. I know that this is a highly charged or emotional issue, because many people feel very strongly, especially about the Watchtower and its abuses, the shunning, and the child sexual abuse. But think of it this way: that if Watchtower, if their First Amendment rights to worship peacefully are violated enough times, they may be able to leverage these actions, this type of activism, as a diversion against these key and critical issues of child sexual abuse and protecting children. If they are saying our rights are being violated to worship, as the Constitution guarantees, that certainly will grab the public's attention. It would grab the attention of the government itself, and in the judicial system, they will support the Constitution. Because when it comes to sexual abuse, you have to have proof, and you have to demonstrate that you have proof. And this is done differently. That can be handled under individual lawsuits. That can be handled by websites and YouTube channels that indicate that this is going on, and but if Watchtower can use the violation of their right to worship, then they can use that as a diversionary tactic to take the spotlight off of these other issues. So that's another thing to think of. I just saw that the fear in that young woman's face, and how she ran to protect her child, and regardless of the fact that she was a Jehovah's Witness, and regardless of the fact that this individual really didn't mean any harm to anybody, it didn't matter, because in the world that we're living in, we don't know. I mean, if somebody you just can't walk into a school these days. I mean, you have to go through protocols to go into a school, because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we have just too many incidents where people have been injured by deranged people coming into public places and shooting it up. I mean, recently there was an act of violence in a family. It can happen. The Keego Harbor situation, where the mother of a disfellowshipped family snapped, and she murdered her children, her husband, and then committed suicide. So these things, they can happen, and among people who have not been educated to fully appreciate our government and our rights under our government, bad things can happen, and they might. It would be a sad thing if it did. But anyway, I think the look on the face of that mother said it all to me. That fear, that's not the way to go, to engender fear. Whether it's intended or not, it causes fear, and it it's unfortunate. There are other ways. I mean, I wouldn't go into a Bible student meeting and disrupt it. I wouldn't go to the General Convention and disrupt it. There are other ways. I think my work here on the internet with YouTube, I get to speak my voice about how I feel, and it doesn't engender fear. Certainly, I hope I don't engender fear, and I do get my message across, and I do believe that hopefully somebody may listen, and maybe it might be the difference in somebody deciding whether or not to stay in the Bible students or not, or maybe they'll have the courage to step out on their own and move away from something that dominates your life, controls your life, and allows them to live freely and happily. And that's my goal, and this is the way I choose to do so. But I do see dangers in the other form, this more, let's say, active form of activism. It's going to lead to trouble someday, and it could boomerang back and really hurt activism altogether. So anyway, that's all I had to say. You don't have to agree with me. I will accept comments that dissent from my point of view, but don't get abusive, because I will take off abusive comments. I have the right to speak my mind. If you don't agree, you can say what you want to say, but I will not accept abuse. And so anyway, I didn't want to make this video, but I just felt compelled when I saw the fear in that young girl. And I can understand that. I have a grandson that's almost 3. They're so innocent, and all you want to do is protect. The last thing in that mother's mind right then and there was what was going on. She was wholly absorbed in protecting her child, and you can see that very clearly. Okay, this is Truth Seeker, and talk to you later.